Welcome to Travel Buddy, presented by Switchfly. In this podcast, we talk about all things travel, rewards, and loyalty. Let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Travel Buddy podcast, presented by Switchfly. Today, we are talking about how loyalty programs shape holiday travel decisions. So, we are sitting at the very early part of November. Travel is coming up. Everybody's thinking about Thanksgiving, Christmas, and we are all making these calculation decisions. Should we go and visit family or not? And how do we pay for those flights? Points, cash, credit card, how is this going to work? And I'm thinking about, when you think about travel and visit family, you have, of course, your pros to go see the family is that you go and see the family. And the cons are that you go and see the family. And there might be some people that love that and other people have some consternation around that. And then, of course, you could go abroad or go to some other city, and that's always fun. And sometimes you can find some really cheap deals. And then, so you have a pro there. And then the con is that you might miss time with your family, and either that's sad for you or they will be upset with you. And so you have to make this calculation problem every year. So I have made this decision once before where, and I think this relates to this topic, where my family was gathering in Tampa, and the flights to Tampa for Thanksgiving were like $500 a piece. And we saw flights to Rome, round trip from Dallas, for like $280. And so we did not go see my family for Thanksgiving, and we went to Rome, and it was great, even though I miss my family. So I know people have these kind of decisions and thinking through where to travel, but I want to start with talking about why holiday travel, particularly as it relates to loyalty programs, is such a big deal. And so when we're thinking about making these decisions where we wanted to travel, a lot of times, because there is super high demand, there is very high pricing as it relates to flights especially. So how do we get around this? Should I go? Where can I afford this? How can I afford this decision? And so I want to see, how can points help us make this decision? Loyalty programs specifically. So Ashley, I will start with you. Ashley, you have been around the block on making travel plans for others as a travel advisor, and you yourself are a world-renowned world traveler, and you have a particular vacation in mind where you went to Peru. And I wanted to see if you could talk about that decision about going to Peru and how that influenced your kind of thinking through this kind of problem of thinking about holiday travel.
Definitely. Well, thank you for that kind introduction, Brandon. So historically in the US market, the Sunday after Thanksgiving is the busiest time to travel annually. So that being said, I love that you got that cheap flight to Rome, but sometimes coming back, as everyone, there's great flight deals, maybe leaving and getting out of the States, but coming back can be quite challenging, as everybody might have the same idea. So that is what I actually have an upcoming trip to Peru this Christmas. And I had a lot of different points on different platforms. And so the engineer in me, the travel advisor in me was, how do I maximize the points that I have with different programs to build an itinerary that is economical, affordable, and I get to go to a great place? So I started looking at multiple destinations, specifically in South America. And I guess for context here, I had points on American, I had points on Southwest, and how could I maximize those? So I started looking at different destinations and on all of the airlines directly to see where I could use my points. And I found that leaving on New Year's Eve was a great day, as there are a lot of different travel deals. But my problem was I could get almost anywhere in the world on New Year's Eve. No one really wants to travel on New Year's Eve, similar to maybe if you're leaving on Thanksgiving Day or if you leave on Christmas Day. Those are great days to travel. But it was coming back. So as everyone maybe was leaving, but how do I find a travel deal coming back? So what I was able to do was maximize my points by leveraging different airlines. So I live in a smaller market. So being in New Orleans, we don't have necessarily a lot of great international destinations. We only have one international flight to London, which I love. But what I decided to do was, where could I get myself somewhere else in the US that I can maybe find a flight deal. So I was able to use Southwest points to get myself to Fort Lauderdale. And then we will be taking the train or a bus to the Miami airport and flying out of Miami.
Okay.
So definitely a combination of maximizing a flight deal and in what I had, which were points. And then similarly on the way back, I was able to get myself from South America, from Peru to Miami, and then I'll use points to get myself from Miami back to New Orleans.
Fascinating. Okay. So the engineer in you putting all this together, like, okay, let me map this out on a spreadsheet or on like a Google map and like see where I can get. I think that's interesting. And I there's so many different components where you're actually putting together a bunch of different modalities to where you need to go. So it's like flying to another city, then maybe a bus or a train down to another city to fly where you need to go. That's interesting.
Yeah. I would say the best resource I've found to help plan for a trip like that is if Google has a feature, if you're looking through Google Flights, I can put New Orleans to anywhere and it will search a destination anywhere in the world and give you and compare flight prices. So I found that to be a really helpful tool. So similarly, I will use, okay, I know I can get myself to Miami, which is a larger airport with more destinations. Miami to anywhere, where can I go? And that's how I land on Peru.
Fascinating. Okay. So this is a really interesting point that we've got some articles that I want to include in the show notes that I think will be helpful for listeners. But one of the things is thinking about how typically when you plan travel, it is like, I know I want to go to this destination. I want to go to this city. How do I get there? And maybe I can do some math and use some points and make it happen. Or you could flip that and say, I want to travel at this date. The destination is less important. Maybe there's a dozen different places that would be fun to travel to that I haven't been to. What can work? And then so by flipping that around, maybe you actually get really great deals. Like for us, the trip to Rome was not on our radar until I saw this incredible price. And I was like, well, we got to go. So I went to Rome. So Rachel, I want to bring you in to talk about that, how when you're thinking about these travel decisions and how loyalty impacts that decision, thinking about the destination first might actually or might actually hinder your decision. You should actually think about, what are my points? What are my programs? What's available to me as far as a destination? And then make that decision. Is that how you see it?
Yeah. So you actually, tying back to your initial equation that you were discussing regarding the holidays of like, do I go see my family or do I go somewhere else? I think a lot of times when you do have distant family, it becomes that question comes into play a lot more often than you would like. And it becomes do I spend these very valuable points that I spent all of my money on and like earning to go somewhere that might be pretty expensive for me to actually travel just to see family? Or could I get a better deal somewhere else and say, I'm sorry, maybe you guys can come with me. Like, do we do family abroad this year? So that's a great like tie into that equation. Is it, loyalty programs can really make that decision a little bit more difficult, because with the available points that they have or miles that they have, they now have this greater emotional weight to decide between. So I think to answer your question, yeah, going the route of flexibility might be the best way to help make that decision. And, seeing any destination in the world, opening that up a little bit, opening up those parameters might be a better way to ensure that you're maximizing your points.
I know there's several different, I guess, decision factors going into thinking about holidays. One is where. So we've talked about that. Instead of maybe thinking about the city first, think about points first or program first. But then there's also a matter of timing. So regarding timing, when you're thinking about making this decision for holiday, it's a little late now maybe to think about Thanksgiving travel, maybe holiday travel for Christmas and so on. So Ashley, I know you have some thoughts, given your background, on how to plan effectively for the time. So we've got location and then timing. How do you see whether somebody needs to plan or buy an airfare early or late? Or is there like a sweet spot that makes sense for people thinking about this decision?
Definitely. I love this topic. I think timing is critical. So, for example, with Switchfly, we get the week off between Christmas and New Year's, which is an amazing perk and benefit of working at the company. But that kind of, I know I wanted to travel within that time frame. So similarly, maybe with Thanksgiving, and I would say it's never too late to plan a trip. So definitely if you're thinking about traveling for Thanksgiving or Christmas, you definitely still have time. And so maybe, you get that day after Thanksgiving. So you want to leave the Friday after Thanksgiving. So when should we be looking at buying a potential flight? They say, the word on the street is internationally 6 months ahead is a good sweet spot in terms of deals, and domestically 6 weeks. So 6 months internationally, 6 weeks domestically. However, I would say, and just to give some context for it, how flight pricing works there are a range of fare classes on an airplane. There's up to 20 different fare classes. So multiple fare classes for first class, business, premium economy, and economy. There's certain allotment of seats for each of those classes. So once those seat groups have been sold, that's typically where you see that price bump go. So once they have filled a fare class, then they will go to the next fare class. And that's where you see typically as it gets closer to the actual departure, you'll see a higher price. However, where you can get those last minute deals are definitely in using loyalty programs and points. Airlines want to drive revenue. Their best margins are on putting travelers in seats and from ancillary products. So maybe they want to just get you on the plane so then they can upsell a bag, or maybe you buy an upgrade, or maybe you're buying even Wi-Fi on the plane. So their goal is to drive travelers and get what they like to call butts in seats. So you can definitely find some last minute flight deals. I would highly recommend using programs and points. And one of the best ways, and I'm doing this for Peru. So for example, I'm flying American from Miami to Lima, but I booked that flight through Qatar Airways using my points with Qatar, since they're One World Alliance partners. So definitely there's also some other ways where you can get flight deals through partner airlines. Great resource for that is How to Win at Travel by Brian Kelly, the points guy. So lots of different ways to maximize and find deals.
Fascinating. Okay, this sounds so complicated, and you have to be an engineer to figure this out. And I know there's tools to do that, and we can talk more about that. And I have some questions maybe around that. But before that, I'm curious, and I want to get all three of you to chime in on this. Is you mentioned fare classes, and so there's upgrades. There's you can get a first class seat, business class seat, maybe a economy plus, which I've never done before. I'm strictly economy. But I'm curious how you guys think about whether you get bags on a credit card loyalty program, or if you're just part of a loyalty program, if there's lounge access. How do you guys think about some of these other things that is beyond just the seat, whether you should upgrade, bags, et cetera, for being a part of these loyalty programs? How does that factor into how and when you decide to travel for the holidays?
I definitely think when factoring or analyzing prices, you have to factor the all-in. So, for example, if I'm flying with Southwest and I get a free checked bag, but maybe the base fare is a little higher, but compared to another carrier, I need to take into account I'm going to have to pay for a checked bag on another carrier. So I think those are a great way, or definitely need to think about the all-in price. But maybe you only have a couple thousand points on an airline. You can use that for a checked bag. So if you pay the base fare in cash, you can do upgrades in points or other ancillary options in points. And that's a great way to leverage. Maybe you have a smaller balance, but you can leverage them on some other ancillary items, such as a bag.
Well, and something else to always be aware of your points, whether it's through a credit card or through the airline or whatever it is, that always running promotions for extra points, right? And extra miles. So for example, I know I have a United loyalty club credit card, and for groceries, I get double points, right? So I always try to make sure to use that card whenever I go buy groceries and then just pay it off. So really make sure that you're not just spending on travel. That is not the only thing earning you points and miles, right? Really be tactical about how to spend. If that means running up that credit card every month and then just paying it off or whatever, you obviously don't want to be stuck with all that credit card debt. But if you can be pretty smart about it, and how you're using it and paying it, you can really double down on a lot of the points. And make sure you're checking out the website, make sure you're signed up to the newsletter. They're always, I'm constantly getting emails for, go to Home Depot this week and you get triple points, or, whatever the case may be. So just be aware of that. I want to step back just one sec on the vacation around the holidays. One of the things that makes it tough is, so obviously Thanksgiving is an American holiday, and that can be very tough for, in the US travel. But like Christmas, is a world holiday, and people tend to have, especially people with kids, their kids tend to be off school or less at the same time, right? So that's something that makes it really tricky. So if you can be flexible on, we don't have to celebrate Christmas as a family on Christmas Day kind of stuff, or, New Year's, or, whatever it is. I think Ashley mentioned this earlier. We almost always fly Christmas Day just because it's like half the price of going the day before or the day after, right? We try to we'll fly on Thanksgiving Day often, and then maybe take an extra day off work and come back that Monday instead of the Sunday. Right. Just because if you're able to stretch, and most airlines do it now, most vacation booking platforms do it now, but we'll kind of give you a glimpse of what a day or two before and the day or two after where you're looking, what the price looks like. So try to keep that in mind of building in a flex a couple of days on either side, and you can really save a lot of money on travel.
Interesting. I'm curious if you guys think that status for some of these programs is more useful, or you get more bang for your buck out of the holiday period than other periods throughout the year. Is that something that resonates with you guys?
I think a tad, and I don't want to monopolize it, but the thing about holiday travel is it is so culturally relevant that most travel platforms and travel providers really craft their entire sales strategy around the holiday season, right? It's like toy manufacturers make 75% of their product or profits within the last month of the year, right? Like it's very similar with travel, probably not to the same degree, but definitely very heavily weighted towards the end of the year. So a lot of times their promotions and stuff are geared towards that holiday, increasing the holiday travel. So if you're looking at the tier, or various status structures, a lot of times it's easier to kind of make up that whatever purchase requirement to hit that next level in the holiday season, because they're trying to make it easy for you to travel in the holiday season. Right.
Interesting. So.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I think status perks are definitely amplified during peak crowds, whether that be during the holidays or other time frames. I mean, we're thinking about this in the perspective of Thanksgiving and Christmas. But, when you think about the 4th of July as well, like that time frame is, status perks really, really come to shine during those peak crowds and peak travel times. I mean, when you think about it, there are some benefits that might feel small, like a free bag or priority check-in when you're doing just, regular travel or sometimes business travel. But like when you're thinking about the extra hundreds of thousands of people that are also now traveling alongside you during this time frame, that priority check-in feels a lot better than that 2-hour line you're going to be waiting in, especially, not to call out Houston for the long lines that are going on right now, but like I could absolutely imagine that priority checking is gonna go miles, pun intended, for the holidays than just if you're traveling on a random weekend in I don't even know, March.
Yeah. purely anecdotally, I will say that is the primary factor in me even considering the American Airlines World Elite MasterCard for the Advantage program. I'm in DFW, so it's an American hub, and I hear that, I fly mostly American, and I hear those sales pitches like constantly, and I get all the mailers, and I have opened 2 of them and sat them on my desk for weeks and stared at this thing and used ChatGPT to tell me the benefits and costs associated with that versus the American Express Platinum card. And I have thought about this for years, and it is just for that reason, though. Literally, I want to cut the line, I want my bags free, and I want to get upgraded when it comes around to it.
Yeah.
Is that worth $800 a year? I don't know, but I think about it a lot.
It depends, Brandon. Are you going to fly out of Houston?
Nope. Nope.
The other thing that I think, status really comes into play here is with winter typically comes rather large snowstorms in the Northeast and around the world. And, lounge access during those delays or snowstorms can make a world of a difference when you have, 2 young ones like yourself who definitely would feel the pain of sitting in just like a regular gate area and not having some little more, private section. So absolutely, those statuses definitely come into play here.
Can confirm I was in a lounge in my last airport trip. This was a few weeks ago, and there was multiple blowouts in our waiting for our flight. And it was nice to have like a nice bathroom in the lounge rather than the public bathroom, if I may say so myself. So yes, totally agree. Totally agree. But so that brings up a great point on one of the segments that we wanted to touch on was about the stress, blackout dates, holiday rush travel. Like, yes, we're talking about winter holidays right now, but the same is true for whether it's Memorial Day, July 4th, Labor Day, different kind of weekends that people take off and do some traveling. And so there's a lot of, like you said, long lines. There's just a lot of stress about maybe a flight gets canceled, a flight drops, for whatever reason. And that's a huge, huge benefit of being in a good loyalty program. So, yeah, that's great.
I mean, to that point, we just talked about status. And one of the things on the other side to consider when you're thinking about like all of the stress of travel, et cetera, is that, you may have these benefits coming into play, like the lounge access and the priority boarding and the check bag. But one of the things that you would want the most, I think, is upgrades are going to be a lot harder because the flights are usually packed. So to both Ian and Ashley's point, the idea of traveling on an off-peak day, just, a couple of hours later, if you can wait one more day to fly on the actual holiday, might make it so that you can even stretch those perks a little further because, those award seats definitely become harder to come by when you have a fully packed flight.
That's right. Well, what else? So, one thing that we had mentioned was maybe there's a way you pay with cash or credit card, or you pay with your loyalty points. Is there anything around that might be useful for listeners to know where you can kind of mix the way that you pay for travel? So again, just to kind of to summarize in a way is when you're thinking about this decision, there's where you're going. So we touched on that first. And then there's when you choose to either, go or when you make that purchase decision. But then there's how you pay. So, you can get those upgrades, you can get a mix of points and cash. Like, how does that factor into the way that you guys think about travel?
I mean, it's tough. It is very case by case. I'm a bit like Ashley in that I will spend literally hours and my wife gives me a hard time, but it's actually fun for me to like, okay, if I can use my United points to get from Chicago to here or to Phoenix or whatever. And like, okay. And then I like being my own travel agent in booking, and checking every single step of the way rather than just sort of like plugging in my days and letting it do it all for me. I don't know how much money I save, but it is fun for me. And I like to think I'm saving some money. So definitely do some legwork in that regard, right? If you travel a lot, you probably have, a couple thousand American Airlines points, a couple thousand United points, right? Like you're very rarely going to have all of it in one very nice pile to use. So be strategic on, maybe you can buy one leg of the journey or at least reduce the cost using points for the, your going out flight, and then book the return flight separately on a different airline if that works for you. Be aware of everywhere you do have points, a constant theme. Rachel will probably give you some off the head statistics of it, but the constant theme that we talk about a lot is unredeemed loyalty points. Industry wide, right? Like, and it's just mind staggering, billions and billions of dollars every year just go unredeemed. And that's free money. I mean, that's your money, right? Like,
it's literally a liability on the business side for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're essentially holding a big IOU that they don't know when is going to be cashed. So
yes, they want you to burn those points. Like, please use those points. They're begging you.
Yes. So for sure.
The answer is 35 trillion. 35 trillion
What?
unredeemed
No.
points.
Wow.
That sounds like
Just in total out there in the world hanging out.
gee whiz. That's amazing. And,
Wow.
and businesses are like, please use these points. Get them off our balance sheet. Please.
So be aware of where you have points, who you have them through. Like, can you roll them over into using them like combined? There's tools. There's like Award Hacker. I think it's just awardhacker.com if I remember right. You can kind of put in your like where you have points with, and it'll sort of search the best deals for you for travel. There's another one, point.me, I think is another one that's similar. But there are tools out there to help you do this. So definitely be aware of what you have.
Yeah, awesome.
One thing I would add in terms of the currency, as loyalty mileages are absolutely a currency, but thinking to use points or cash is who you're traveling with. So for example, on that Peru trip that I was telling you guys about that I have coming up, is my partner and I traveling, and I'm using the points for his flight and I'm going to pay cash for mine. So I can earn miles for my own flight, because you don't earn on a points redemption. So if I was, let's say we paid cash for his flight, well, he's going to earn those miles. I want the miles, right? So I put the point, you can use points redemptions for other people. So I think it's also, from a strategy perspective, you have to think you're also burning, but think ahead to on the earn side as well and setting yourself up for future success.
Okay. I have a point about this that I'll close with. Ashley, I'm going to come back to you. But before we do that, any other closing thoughts for our listeners when they're thinking about these decisions?
I think, like, since just on the topic of points and whether or not points and cash, during this time, to Ashley's point, like, you could definitely try to think through the potential earn as you burn. And, during this time, we often think of points as like a financial relief, right? Like, oh, I've done all of this work to earn all of these things, and these points will in the future be a financial, make this investment a little bit less of a burden. But during the holidays in particular, your points are going to be worth less, because the amount of points you need to actually cover the cost of a flight is going to increase alongside the actual cost of flights. So sometimes those cash fares are cheaper than the total investment you will need from a points perspective. And definitely try to consider, okay, if my point per dollar or whatever it may be is equal to this, I'm actually better off going the cash route. It's probably a contributing factor into why there's so many points unredeemed. But from my personal strategy is I will spend the points, especially on longer trips to, say, Rome or to, overseas or abroad. I will save the points for the long haul and premium cabins, because that's when the comfort of traveling in that style is going to outweigh the cost the investment from that side. So I will save my points for the premium cabins for sure.
Okay, interesting. But there is a downside to doing that, because once you do book one of those very fancy seats, you're never going to go back to economy. That's a problem.
That is a problem.
No, that's great. Okay. So I'm picturing that meme of that GIF where there's like a woman who's like kind of staring off into space, and there's all these like math formulas that are like overlaying her face, and she's trying to like work through this calculation problem. And not everybody listening to this show is like Ian or Ashley, travel nerds wanting to like break all this down on a spreadsheet and spend hours tinkering and figuring out the maximum, benefits of their points. But it is extremely useful to be thinking about these different criteria, if you will, in making this decision. And so you've got, where are you going? You've got, when should you go? And then when should you buy? And then you've got upgrade issues, the ancillary products, if you will, whether you're going to, a higher, better seat or lounge access, free bags. And then you've got a mix of whether you're going to buy with points versus cash, and also thinking about the different travel programs that you are connected to or have points with even airline partnerships. Like you mentioned, Qatar Airways is part of One World Alliance. And then you've got who you're traveling with. Maybe you can, shift points over to another person to cover some of that. This is all a lot. If you don't have the time and space to do this in your life, what are some general rules of thumb that you might have? Like, okay, you are going to go flying for the holidays. Obviously, there's winter holidays and there's other holidays throughout the year. But generally speaking, if you follow these steps, you will maximize the travel programs or points that you have to make the best optimal decision, even though maybe it's not, 100% the best possible pricing decision you can make. But generally, you're going to be pretty well off if you follow these steps. What do you say to that? What do people do that are feeling a little bit overwhelmed like I am at this very moment?
I would say take it back to the basics. Step one, make sure you are a loyalty member of whatever carrier you're flying. Okay. I think that's basic. Establish yourself as a loyalty member, whether that's American Airlines, United. And then another tip I would say is maybe let's say, I'll give you an example. I'm flying Copa to Peru or coming back from Peru. I'm not going to probably fly that carrier, for a while, but I can earn United miles on that flight. So there are ways to earn miles with your primary carriers, whether, that's one of the big three in the US, but always be earning. So, sales always be closing, but always be earning. Make sure you're at least signed up for the loyalty program or an applicable loyalty program where you can earn miles on any flight that you're on.
Okay.
I would start there.
Okay. Anybody else have any tips? If you're just considering this decision, you're not going to wade into the weeds, but generally speaking, do these couple of things, you'll be in good shape.
I think if you're not a frequent traveler, don't just go join a loyalty program just to join a loyalty program, right? Like, find what you use in your life that works for you, that you're going to use a lot, and more than likely, you're going to be able to easily find one that has a kind of a loyalty connection, right? You're going to be able to use your American Express, grocery credit card, whatever, like Sam's Club card, whatever it is, you're going to be able to use those to buy travel. So, if you're not flying on a routine basis to where it's worth getting like a specific airline credit card, look at my grandfather uses, I think he has a BP card because he has a little BP station just right around the house that he gets his gas at every time, and he can buy travel through there. So find what works for you in your life that you're going to use a lot, that you're going to rack up those points with, and then just explore what options they have for using your points, and travel, I almost bet, will be one of them.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. That's how I think about it. I've considered a bunch of different individual loyalty program cards for specific airlines and things like that, but I keep coming back to the American Express Platinum because I'm not going to wade through that decision every single time, but dollar for dollar, it's a really good, I guess, cost. It's like $800 a year now, but I know it gives me tons of perks for tons of airlines, tons of hotels, and it's pretty good. It's maybe not the best decision overall, but given all the factors, it's pretty good. Rachel, what would you say? What's your hot tips for people thinking about this decision that don't want to wade through all the details?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna completely left field this
yes.
answer, just so you know, because I myself am one of the people who purely go to see family. Like that decision is made for me.
Okay.
There will not be a holiday that we have not sorted it out, barring any other, like they decide to go on vacation.
That's
like
good. Okay.
my family, we're pretty on lock when it comes to seeing each other for the holidays. And, Ashley mentioned traveling with her partner. We have it pretty much sorted out that like Thanksgiving, we go to Charleston to see my partner's family. And for Christmas, we go to Cocoa Beach to see my family. And that's our routine. So knowing that there are people who are probably listening that are in a similar situation where they know that these are the areas that they're going to go to, I would say try to find a program that also gives you the opportunity to spend your points in a different way than just on flights. Because there are ways to enhance your holidays by doing other things than just flying somewhere. So if the program offers the ability to do a certain activity or to, go see a museum and get those tickets all redeeming through your points, and you can burn that way in order to meet status, like I think that that's definitely something I would recommend exploring as well, because I know that if I go down to Coco, there's, an aquarium down there. There's, the zoo's down there. There's probably something that I can do in that general area that I can, use my points to spend and still enhance my holiday that way. So that's my advice is if you know what you're doing and you know the plans and you might not be flying because we don't fly, we do the drive. It's fine. I would recommend taking a look at the programs that allow you to spend your points on other things.
That is a great point. Generally speaking, be creative. It's not just a flight. But in others' defense, maybe listening to this, their families don't live in exotic places like Cocoa Beach and Charleston. So Statesboro,
I don't know
Georgia,
that I would say Cocoa
exotic.
Beach or Charleston is exotic.
Charleston is so beautiful.
It is beautiful. It is. It's very beautiful. Maybe we have different definitions of the word exotic.
It is more beautiful than Statesboro, Georgia. No offense to Statesboro. Go Eagles, okay? But it's not as fun as the beach, okay?
One last point is Ashley said something that triggered my reaction. The you don't earn points on when you're booking reward miles, right? So think about your next trip as well, right? That this trip could be a little more expensive, and if you've got the cash, it might be worth it to just buy it in cash right now and really rack up the miles for the next trip too. So don't think of it as like you got to burn everything right now, right? Like now's a good time to really earn points as well. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a great point. Really great point. Well, as you all are considering these decision criteria as a fallback, just plug it all into ChatGPT and it'll create an itinerary for you. Just kidding. You can go to switchfly.com, however, because there are amazing tools and resources that you guys have to be thinking about your travel. And please join the newsletter there, see the other podcast episodes that we have and other blogs. But you guys do such phenomenal work helping people make these kind of decisions, especially on the travel loyalty side, when thinking about putting together programs and how that can best serve travelers, especially on their technology side and things like that. So you guys are experts. Very much appreciate your insight and input as always. And I'm very much looking forward to the next episode. So Rachel, Ian, Ashley, thank you so much for your insight. Can't wait to talk again. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.